Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Paranormal, the New Normal. I'm your host, as always, Jeremy, here trying to, trying to make this world a little more normal. Does it ever happen? Yeah, no, just never happens. Never happens. But, as always, we pursue on, and to help me in this endeavor tonight, I, of course, brought a guest with me, and my guest is Lisa Carrillo, an author, and I really know how to describe her besides being an expert on awakening your true self, which I like that title, so I stuck with it, and I'm stamping it. But uh so, but we're gonna find out exactly what she does in a few minutes. But how you doing tonight, Lisa?
Really good. Good to see you, Jeremy.
Glad to have you on, and I have to say, looking at your profile, I'm like, what exactly is her title? I mean, I'm looking at it, and I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm going with it. Expert on awakening your true self. I'm going with it. I like it. I'm freaking keeping it. I was going back and forth on it for like a good 10 minutes. I was like, all right, I'm keeping it.
I think it's
I
inspired. I love it.
I mean, yeah. Well, I guess the best place just to start all off is what brought you down the path to this spiritual world, I must say, that you operate in, because it is a spiritual world that you operate in, kind of. So,
Yeah,
in a way.
absolutely. As a little child, I did already have some memories of before this life. I saw a picture of Jesus with the children, and I thought to myself, well, that's not quite how it looks, but I remember the place they're trying to depict. I was thinking of heaven or the other side. And I went to my mom and I said, "Hey, mom, how can I go here?" And she said, blah, 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 something about church. And I thought to myself, oh, she does not know what she's talking about. So it's been a long time coming. But um, I'd say the most pivotal moment was, well, two pivotal moments. One was I was at a silent retreat. I realized I was trying to be awakened. I thought you can't you can't get present by hoping for something. So I let go of that. And the next morning I woke up with no thoughts of an individual self. And that lasted for a while and changed my whole perspective of how Earth works. And then after my best friend died, I had a memory of being in between lives. We were hanging out and we were teasing each other. And he said, "What was it like to be an atheist?" And I said, "Oh, I don't think that's any fun. Don't try to remember that." And he said, "What? You don't think I could have fun being an atheist?" And he jumped into this life just to prove that he could have fun being an atheist, which he did very well. So those two things really just kind of set the stage.
Interesting. Okay. I gotta backpedal a little bit because kind of curious. Like you say, your view of Earth changed. I'm kind of curious to how. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, not like how it happened because you just explained that, but like how did the view change in more of a way?
Right. So up until then, it felt like effort was an important part and controlling different aspects of myself was an important part. And after that, um, I feel this that we are that is moving us all. And when we put in, our mental ideations of resisting or our mental ideations of thinking it's only second best, then it has this natural way of helping bring us along. But it's never not in control. Never.
Hmm.
So we can relax and just let this aliveness flow through us and discover that we're essentially unharmable.
Okay. See, I'm starting to love this idea because I've always jokingly said to my mother or my wife, anybody who would listen, that I believe I may be immortal and that I do what I want to do because I think fate has it in for me to go when I'm going to go, and it's not going to make a difference.
Yes.
Like, that's always been my philosophy in like the last decade or so. And comes like, I just, nothing seems to really hurt me. So, I mean, I'm not out there juggling chainsaws or anything ridiculous, but it's just it's like I don't know. been told by multiple people that the air age range I'm going to die in probably, and it's pretty far out there. So I kind of always had like this thing like I'm kind of immortal in a way. I had one of those gold strands of fate like in the Hercules movie, and they can't cut it. Yay! That's kind of what I related to. But I don't know. I like the philosophy because it's something I always kind of believed in myself. Like well, example A, it ain't gonna kill me. I don't think. But but
Right.
I mean, it's just I don't know. It just makes sense. Like if you're worried too much about what you're doing to try to survive, how are you living?
Right.
Ooh,
Right.
great
I can
question.
feel your freedom as you say that, that there's something in you that says, whatever I am authentically is good. And I don't have to be modulating it just to live. And I think that's the core place that we can let that authentic aliveness just flourish. And we don't have to second guess, being safe when we're fundamentally safe.
Yeah, I mean, I of course do want to put a disclaimer out there for all my watchers and listeners. This doesn't mean go drive drunk, go do stupid things like that. No, don't tempt fate. I mean, it's just be happy living. Just don't do stupid things. I mean, but still, like you can have that extra piece of cake. You can smoke that pack of cigarettes. It ain't gonna kill you that faster than your or earlier than your fate probably had you dying anyway. So if it's meant to happen, it's meant to happen. That's basically the way I've always felt about it. If it's meant to happen, it's meant to happen. So I mean, yeah, fate's a fate exists, and I mean, it seems like you're a true believer in it as well.
It seems like I'm a what?
A true believer in fate as well.
Oh, yeah, there's definitely it's essential, but I think we will find ourselves experiencing that fullness when we're in tune with our authentic self. If we're not in tune with our authentic self, then we may be doing something to grasp something that's superficial. We may be doing something that just tries to um, bolster our egos, and all of those things will have consequences. That's just how this works. But we don't have to do something to avoid consequences, but it turns out it's more fulfilling to do things from that inner aliveness, that inner vibrancy, that inner rush of really being that fully expressed, fully joyful, fully loving, creative person that we are.
Which I 100% get that, and I get. I mean, I actually kind of want to get into it. Like, but how does living this way affect, say, like your relationships with other people? Like, because other people are the devil, and they, no matter what you do, someone's gonna get pissed off in this world. So, how do you deal with that?
Oh, that is such a good question, because I feel like that's where I get to discover what does it mean to be my true self. An idea is nothing. It's how is it in the day-to-day live. So, for example, I went to work today this morning at our opening meeting. My manager says, "Lisa, I need to talk to you." And my ego thing is, okay, did I do something wrong? Let's get this conversation over with. And when I checked in with her in the morning, she said, "Oh, I don't have time to talk about it. We'll have to talk about it this afternoon." So, the head can do all kinds of funny things with that. But what is just become the vibrant way of living for me is living in the unknown. Whenever I'm trying to make myself safe, whenever I'm trying to be happy and getting exactly what I want, I'm smaller. So I get to practice living the day in the unknown and notice if my mind was going, oh, is it going to be something bad? Is it going to be something good? Because the mind wants to put a box on it. No, no, I was just allowing myself to be in the unknown. And I went in there knowing that I like her. Whatever she has to say to me, we can discuss. There's not, you know, she's not going to try to hurt me. And if she did, I'm an adult, we can talk about it. So I went in there at a very open, free place. And she said, blah, 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 there's this policy and you're supposed to be doing blah, blah, blah. And okay, was it a policy that I particularly like? No, but is it a policy that's going to really change my life? Not now. If it does in the future, it's about time off and that kind of thing. If it does in the future, I'll negotiate with her. But that's the thing is, I let go of trying to be in a safe box of what I know, and I stayed in the unknown. And I find that when I'm allowing myself to be in the unknown is when I've got my heart blasted open, I've got my mind clear, and that's when, the natural inspiration has the least resistance flowing through.
I like that. I mean, you, I like that. I mean, it's kind of like dare. It's kind of like just daring. It's daring. It's brave. It's I'm just going to do this because it's going to happen anyway. So I might as well just embrace it. Which I mean, even as a kid, like getting called to the principal's office, even like I always knew I wasn't going to really get in trouble because I'm like, man, I could. I mean, negotiate 1 word 4, but I'm like, I could talk my way out of this because I'm good at that. I've always been good at talking my way out of things. So I mean, I would never get in trouble really because I would always find a way to talk through it and made it make sense and made them realize like, okay, he really wasn't doing this to be evil or to be bad. He was just doing this because it was kind of like the only option, and usually it works out. I mean, yeah, a few detentions here and there, but that happens. That freaking happens.
Right.
But like you said, you can't avoid consequences. Consequences are universal and are going to happen. But if you go in there with an open mind and instead of just being one of those people who starts freaking out as soon as they get in there and gets anxiety ridden and can't stop talking, has to keep interrupting, like making them madder, like you're just no, just sit there and see what they gotta say first before you react to anything. If you go in there acting like you're guilty, you're guilty. Like I mean, that's just common sense,
You
at least to me.
bastard. Yes, exactly. Right. And there's so many kinds of day-to-day things. So my husband, obviously, husbands and wives are never on exactly the same pace. So usually one's
Amen.
the faster one, one's the slower one. That's just how it's going to be. And, I prefer to be the faster one because I don't really like to be in the slow roll where I'm kind of being pulled along and telling the other one to slow down. So I didn't pick a faster husband. I picked a slower husband, and
Of
that
course.
means some of the times I'm like, come on, come on. And it's this ever um, constant reminder that time is not what life is about. And
No, I mean, of course not.
you're right. And I'm so grateful. Not that I remember that every moment, but I really am grateful that I get that regular reminder. And as I'm getting slower, it turns out we're getting closer to the same pace. But every relationship, when we hit a rub, it's an opportunity to be reminded that this infinite doesn't play by our rules. And
No,
it's
it doesn't. I mean, no. Go ahead, finish. You can finish your thought.
it's this invitation to let that house of cards that we build up our security in, let that house of cards tumble down and then see where we fall.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think time is a very. I mean, everybody always has goals like, oh, in the next 5 years I see myself here, in the next 10 years I'll see myself here. What every employer asks you when you apply for a job, and it's just, and I mean the correct answer is always, oh, I see myself moving up here. But I mean that's always the correct answer. But it's just I I don't like the concept of time. I never did. I mean, I'm a very have to be on time type of person. Always have been, just because that's how I was raised. I I had cousins who were late to everything, and it was always like the shame of the family. So, I mean, I have to be on time to everything, or I get really. The anxiety does kick in a little bit at that point because I'm like I have to be on time. It's one of my things. But and even if I'm like running late to work, like 5 minutes, I freak out because I'm like, I don't want to be late. I'm the guy that's always on time usually, or at least a little bit early. But so I mean, I have a hard time dealing with the concept of time because it exists. We can't escape it, just like consequences. But because we have to, like, we have to live in it. We have to. There's no way not to, or you wouldn't survive in this world. But okay, there are ways not to, I guess, but they're not really favorable ways to survive in this world, I would say. But I mean, it's just you have to deal with it. I mean, and even though I think time is not as precious as we make it, because we do live, in my opinion, multiple lives. So whatever we didn't get to do in this life, we'll get to do it in the next life, hopefully. Like that's just kind of the way you gotta think. At
Right.
least at least to me. At least to me. That's my opinion on it. But are you a believer in reincarnation in multiple lives, or
I wasn't a believer, and I actually can't say I'm a believer. I just remember them. So I assume I remember them because I had them. And I remember, in fact, that after my best friend jumped into this life, I went to another room where I kind of planned out my life because I want to jump into this life and see how he's doing. And we're 27 years different. So I went to this room and there were records of thousands of lives there that I had lived. And I knew exactly how to orchestrate a life that I thought would be a fun adventure. And I did that. And then I jumped into this life. And now I remember many lives when I was and lives when I was woman. Most of the lives I remember difficult lives. I think that's just because those are the most memorable.
probably? I mean, living a peaceful life, I'm sure, isn't that memorable. And
Right.
those who live peacefully are not usually that memorable to begin with. So you remember the ones who everybody always knew. Everybody in the neighborhood always knew that person, and they lived a memorable life. But maybe not for good things. But I mean, memorable for just being them, basically. But since you do remember multiple past lives, I was actually going to ask you, what would you say is the most interesting life you lived?
I was a murderer.
Okay, now
And
you got my attention.
yes, I was working for other people, and and by the end of that life, I was really done. I had learned a lot. I learned about because I was totally outside the culture. That's not a life where you're fitting in at all. So I was outside the culture. I was watching what people strive to live for. I was watching what people prioritize in their life, and I could see, were they turning out happy? Were they not turning happy? Like, I was really in this total observer place, and I learned so much. And by the end of it, I was sick of what I was doing. And fortunately, I had a heart attack. I was able to just quit working for my employer. But yeah, that was such a learning life for me. Such a learning life. Yeah.
Now, when you can see these lives, do you like know what time periods they're in, or is that kind of elusive?
This one was fairly modern. Like, it could have been parallel to this one. For me, it's kind of like everything's happening in a bowl of soup. And you can make a thread however you want. You can take a noodle, for example, and it can go anywhere in that thread of soup. And then you can be outside the soup and jump onto any piece of the noodle. So our timeline is like a noodle in the soup, and we're outside. We can jump into any part, and if there were another, if I was also living in this timeline right now, that doesn't mean that I'm living it twice. It just means that earlier, younger me also lived in this location.
Interesting, interesting. Okay, so when you these past lives, you're not talking just traditional past lives. You're actually talking about a multiversal view almost of you in different. I want to say, well, yeah, you in other universes. I mean, it's as much as this may be looking like it's turning into a comic book movie, folks. It's really not. But I mean, it's what actually helped me understand it more than anything, though, because thank you, Spider-Man. I mean, multiversal threads are kind of like special things, and just because I mean, so you can kind of almost, and I'm sorry for the comic references here, but you can almost kind of Madame Web it and see all the different timelines running at once in a way in that room you talked about.
Yes, exactly. Time is not different than any other dimension of space.
No,
Time
it's not.
is another dimension of space. It's only because we're in the third dimension that when we look to the fourth dimension, we experience it something like time. But really, it's not. It's just another dimension of space.
Hmm. Which I mean, you're right. It is. 100% is. It's just, I think it's just one of those. It's one of those things we haven't figured out how to really control yet. I mean, we're like you said, we're in the 3D world. That most likely I would say is the fifth dimension, if anything. So I think time would be. So I mean, that's a skill actually to be able to see that. Which is that a skill that actually can help you in the timeline you're on? Like, can you see the future in a way, like in some way or shape or form?
I two things I can't say I can just see the future, but two things have happened. One is that I get these senses about the future. Like this feels like the way we're headed, but I don't really say that that's seeing the future. The other thing is there's been two times when I felt like I sort of got to choose a timeline. Like I could feel the possibility and something deep inside me. So I don't think I had this skill in this life, but I had another that I could sort of access. Something deep inside me knew how to say, okay, in this case, it really, really, really matters. And I'm choosing this timeline.
All right, so I mean, it's kind of more premonitions in a way, like almost like in like that movie Knowing with Nick Cage. Like it's almost like you can kind of see what's coming down the road, not fully, but you get enough of a sense to know, okay, I gotta step out of the way so this can go past me, and I'll go this path instead. Like it's,
Yes.
which I mean, it's not hard to believe because I mean, premonitions are very common. I mean, I've had a lot of guests on here who commonly have premonitions in dreams most of the time. I've had plenty myself over the years, but especially when I was younger, but they never amounted to anything important. They were just conversations or somebody falling in class or some stupid crap like that. It would never actually came to anything that would change my life for the better or worse, I guess, in any way. But beggars can't be choosers. So I'm not
No.
going to sit here and complain about that. But you said a little while ago that when you discovered how to do this, it helped you figure out your life's purpose. And what purpose did you come up with? I'm always kind of curious about this.
This is just so hilarious, it turns out, for me. So I came here because I wanted the adventure of being limited and seeing, could I enjoy it? Like mastery of life for me is being able to enjoy everything that happens. That's it. The rest is really fun. It's fun to learn how to become more self-expressed in situations where I feel afraid. It's fun to learn how to have more and more compassion. But really, really, at the end, my experience of success, if there ever were, is that I just enjoy being me. I enjoy everything that happens. And if I'm doing that, I've mastered the life.
Interesting. Well, I mean, you chose the right timeline to do that in. I mean, America under Biden. Yeah, that's a good timeline to just kind of learn how to deal with things. That's for damn sure. But
Yep.
God,
It's really, it really,
yeah,
I feel that this aliveness that we are, because, we can theorize and conceptualize about this aliveness, but it's what we are. And it's what's creating every moment. So if I'm feeling aligned with this moment, like I know I want this moment, then I'm aligned with that thing. And so I've discovered, wow, my gosh, I'm having to be compassionate with myself because now I'm feeling guilty for no good reason because of my past conditioning. So time to be compassionate to myself. Or no, I've got to get another house repair and I've got to hire contractors again. Oh, well, what's good about that? I get to meet these new people. Like finding each time, why would my inner self want this? And as I do that, my values have changed. And then because my values have gone with that, I start to know, oh, so this inner aliveness in me, it values compassion. It values interacting with more people. And so the more I know from the inside this that we are, and here's the long point I'm getting to, I feel that I want this adventure that America and the world is on with all the crazy power structures as we figure out how to shift off the old skin and pop out. Like I know that this that we are does pop out. It does. That's just its nature. And so I get to be here right when we are popping off this old skin that doesn't fit anymore.
which makes it makes it sound amazing. It really does. And do you think that everybody has this ability possibly to be able to break the fifth dimension in a way and kind of go into their own version of that room? Or is it a special ability like, psychicness, mediumships that like only certain people can acquire fully?
No, it's what we are. So anybody can get to the point of tapping into this that we are. It doesn't require anything. A lot of us are wrestling with avoiding fears, trying to control our lives, and that takes up a lot of energy.
It truly does.
The less we're doing that, the more energy we're going to have to tuning into this that we are.
Well, what would you say is the best way for people to get rid of fear? What would you say is the best like method to do that? Like, because it's not an easy thing by any means. I mean, people are scared of the simplest things to fearing the most complex things in their life. So, I mean, there are some fears that make no sense, and there are fears that most of the world has. I mean, so how do people get over them? That's the
Yeah.
question I think a lot of people would ask that question, I think.
Yes, exactly. One thing, so I can say what has helped me. First of all, my goal hasn't been to get rid of the fear. It's been to let the fear drive me deeper into what I am. And so that means, for example, we're starting this business and there's a lot of money up front and we have really no idea how many customers we're going to get. And at first, I was trying to find out, well, what are all the things you're supposed to do to grow a business, blah, blah, blah. And of course, yeah, that's important. I'm not saying not to do any of that, but deeper than that is, why am I doing it at all? And how is this life and love and creativity expressing itself through me? And then just release myself and abandon to that, knowing that, yeah, there'll be moments that it feels fearful. But I like the fear because it shows I'm on that living edge. The comfort zone is always with the ego. But
Yeah,
fear puts
of
us
course.
on that comfort, on that edge, that living edge of, wow, what is going to happen? And making friends with that feeling tunes me deeper, it forces me to go deeper than just, figuring it out with my head.
Which makes sense. I mean, it's kind of like it's more like you're managing your fear, not quite getting rid of it, but it's more being in control of it, not letting it control you in a way,
Right.
which makes sense. Yeah, if people could learn to manage their fear, this world would be there'd be a lot better drivers out there. I'll tell you that much for one thing. But
Right. Each person has like something different that their psyche has chosen as their control mechanism. It can be, I've got to be responsible. And letting go of being responsible all the time, knowing sometimes I fail and somebody else covers for me. Now I'm in the receptive, grateful mode. And for some of us, that's terrifying. I wanted to be in the responsible mode. Now I've got to be in this, vulnerable place. Or other people, their control mechanism is humor or their control mechanism is intelligence, or whatever it is, over planning, overachieving, over relaxing, whatever our control mechanism is, giving ourselves permission to flow into the opposite brings us back to that living edge, that living edge where we have to admit, I'm not running my life. Something deeper is running my life.
Makes sense in a way. I mean, you can't let you have to run your life. You can't let anything else run it for you. You can't let fear, you can't let guilt, you can't let anger, you can't let anything run your life. I mean, it's just you have to be in full control. Otherwise, you're not going to be living the life you should be living because
Right.
none of those emotions are going to help you in the long run. Really, they're just
Yeah.
going to make you. They're going to make your life shorter. One, most likely, or you're more fated to have them take you to begin with, I guess, in a way. But not to contradict myself earlier, but it's just I don't know. Emotions are dangerous. They can be if they're not controlled.
Well, rather than controlling them, for me, what I do is allow them to break my heart open, to let surrender to that flow of life. And, what is that flow of life? Maybe, at first my life was so full of duty, I really couldn't say what was the flow of life in me. But it became, what was it that made me alive, connected, fulfilled, creative? And it started with just little decisions. Am I going to buy the clothing or the furniture or go on the trip that helps me feel that? Or am I going to do something that's safe and comfortable? And little by little by little, it just became, okay, well, I can work less hours, have more time to write books. It just it developed. I mean, you found this podcast. Something in you just knew, this is curious. This has juice for me. And when we're surrendering to that juiciness, then we are allowing ourselves to align with where the universe is going.
I love that phrase right there. Surrendering to the juiciness. I love it. But and I mean, you're 100% correct. I mean, I've been told that this was something I was supposed to do, that I was meant to do it, and that I'm playing my part in the paranormal world by doing it, by getting people's stories out there and getting their lives out there. But at the same time, it fulfills a part of me that I never knew needed fulfilling. It's not something I didn't when I was a kid. I mean, podcasts were a thing, but I never said I wanted to be on the radio. I never said of course I wanted to be on TV. What kid didn't? But I never said I wanted to be a podcaster. I mean, or a radio star. I guess back then was what it would have been called. But now it's just kind of like, yeah, it's part of who I am. Like it's undeniable. And what's going on, Brian? Head of Parapost Network. Glad to have you watching, buddy. But I mean, but if we, okay, actually, that's a good segue in a way, because if we embrace the juiciness, which I freaking love that, if we embrace the juiciness, how are we supposed to get done all the things we, have to deal with, like taxes, work, bringing money into the house to pay the bills?
Right, right. Um, yeah, I was afraid when I started living this way that my taxes weren't going to get done. And it was a gradual process. At first, I was doing more and more of the juiciness, and there was the duty still. And I just let the juiciness grow and the duty get less and less. And finally, now, my gosh, it's probably 95%, 99% juiciness. And so I thought, okay, will the taxes get done? But the amazing thing is, living this way, I feel just so naturally fulfilled because I know I'm following the moment. And so I don't resist the moment either. So when a thought came, oh, look, I have a moment to do some taxes, I just did it. Like I wasn't resisting, like, oh, yeah, but I don't like doing taxes and blah. I didn't, I just said, oh, that's what's the next thing before me. Let's see how it happens. So I did some taxes that didn't turn out to be a problem. And when I was ready to move on, I put them aside, continued doing something else, and the taxes got done. Amazing. So there's things in life where we are so connected. we're connected to our families, we're connected to our coworkers, we're connected to the all the ways that money flows through us. And when we're just surrendering to that connection, then we'll do what needs to be done just because we notice. We're not having to fight to be something that we're not. That's really where resistance comes in. It's just an overall attitude that my life has to be in this box. Well, this is about not having any box. So there's no box to limit us, and there's also no box to feel dutiful.
Makes sense that way. I mean, kind of makes me feel bad for people that lived 100, 200 years ago because, like, they were brought up in their station that, like, you do this, there's nothing else in life you can do. And, like, you don't enjoy life. You just do what you got to do to get through it. I mean, unless you're one of the top 1% back then, even. But I mean, still, it's just so. I mean, I feel like we have a lot more freedom to enjoy the juiciness nowadays than we ever did in our past, in our human history on this timeline, at least. I mean, because I mean, maybe when we were cavemen, maybe there was a little less responsibility, maybe. But since then, I mean, it's basically been every step of society. It's been responsibility for this is your job. This is what you do your whole life until you die, and then someone else is going to do it. The cycle will continue. Like it's now, it's actually like, okay, you want to go online and write movie reviews on your free time to make yourself happy? Go do it. Why not? You want to go uh, review restaurants you go to on every weekend? Sure, why not? Like, yes, you may say to yourself, "Well, who's going to care about what I say?" Guess what? There are people who will, because there are always people who care about something. And there's always people who are going to care about anything that's done at some point. It may take a while to get found. Trust me, but eventually people are going to care. Like, people are going to care, and they're going to, if it's not around, they're going to start asking where it went. Like, that's just the way it goes. And yeah, taxes suck, but H&R Block is good for that. So it's just it's a half hour appointment. You drop them off and you're good to go. But I
Yeah.
mean,
That's a very good point that we live in this really rich, rich, diverse time. So as you're living your life and you can do so many different things, what is it that you're finding is that inner yes, this is the right thing for me? What does that feel like for you? How do you know when you're on it?
I mean, for me personally, it's just after you get done with doing something you enjoy, you feel good. Like you just feel like you don't feel like you spent an hour working hard at something. You feel like you just relaxed for an hour and enjoyed something, or 2 or 3 hours, depending on which show I'm on. But I mean, still, it's pure relaxation. Like you feel like the world's a better place when you're done. Like everybody deserves a hobby like that, in my opinion.
Yes. Oh golly, I wish I had recorded that. That's great.
Well, guess what? I just did.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I think that's the discovery. And when something in us is resisting doing that, because we're afraid or we think we've got something to do, then that is the next opening. Opening and learning how to say no, opening and how to surrender our identity that makes us think we shouldn't be that. There's so many different ways that can go, but that's what life is. It's playing with the yeses and the nos till we find where's that groove.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, it's the same. People, you're talking about money a couple times, and it's just when it comes to money, like I personally, and money's always been an issue, especially the last few years. But somehow when you need it the most, it always finds a way to manifest and appear to you. Like and if you don't stress about it, somehow it just always works out in the long run. I don't know how. I don't know who or what is watching over me to make this happen, or if it's just the universe connecting at the right time. I can't explain things sometimes, but I feel like if you stop worrying so much and just let things happen, eventually everything kind of does work out for you.
So true. It's so true. Yes. I think money, that's probably one of the main purposes of money is to get us to experience. We don't have to hold on tight. We don't have to make things happen. We can just willingly flow forward. Yeah, I love that. To me, you know, we can come back here as many times as we want or not. Although, if I'm against coming back here, then I probably didn't learn the lesson here because I didn't get to the point where I'm enjoying everything. But once we have this sense that we're eternal, it just makes it so much easier. Like, okay, I can take a risk. I can leave the corporate world and see what happens. I lived dependent on a boyfriend for however many years it was, and during that period, you know, then we broke up, and he continued to support me for another year or two, and he was dating throughout that time. At any moment, he could find the one and say, "Oh, sorry, this is over." And it was this great living on the edge. Like, "Oh, okay. I don't know, but this is what's showing up, and I'm going forward." I think falling in love with living on the edge is where we're gonna find that aliveness. It's just so helpful. And if you do want to remember past lives, I found the vibrational state really, really helpful. That's that state we're in a lot of times right when you wake up in the morning, your body's kind of buzzing, and you can
Mm.
actually learn to be in that state. The International Academy of Consciousness teaches it, but you just focus on a particular part of your body until it's buzzing, and then kind of gradually let it spread through your whole body, and then just kind of just to let your consciousness just kind of rest at the back of your head and just be in that open buzzing state and ask a question, see what happens. And I've been able to remember past lives from that. So, but knowing those makes it so much easier because we feel how eternal we are and how this is a game. This is like going to the grocery store for 10 minutes and then coming back. That's our whole life. It's a trip to the grocery store and coming back.
Which make I mean, it's true. I mean, it really is. And but how do people? Okay, watch you. This is a good question because I mean, I kind of know the answer from previous guests, but everybody's perspective is different, so I like to hear different perspectives. What if you discover a past life that is bad, that is so horrifying that it takes you time to actually get over the traumatic experience of living it again?
Yes.
Like, how does someone get past that?
I had two lives that were, well, a few lives like that. One, I was working underground in some kind of very hot smelter kind of place, and it was pure suffering. They basically worked, I was a man again. They worked me until I died. I died very young, like 20s or, yeah, I don't know if I made it to 30. It was really horrendous. And another life, I was a father during kind of like the tenement times. I had 4 kids and a wife, and I could not provide well enough for them, and they died from disease and the filth that we were living in. And so both of those, I felt a lot of suffering about that. Um, but I know at this point, because I've gone back to every experience I've had in this life and discovered that good happened. So maybe good happened from both of those lives. So I just rested. In the case with my kids, I went back to their souls and I said, "Hey, I didn't provide a life where you could live very long." And all 4 of them said, "Oh, that's okay. We weren't planning to be on earth that long. That was perfect." So phew, no need to suffer over my kids dying. And then the next one about that just purely brutal one, I asked myself from that period and saying, what in the world did you get out of that life? And it was this sense that whatever comes, I can handle it. I've lived the worst there could be. Whatever there comes, I can handle it. And that is a really, really good thing to have.
It is. I mean, it seems like in that last one, like they kind of gave up on expectations. Like it was just kind of like, what will be will be. I have no expectations for this life. I have no expectations for society, which in this day and age we really shouldn't. but people still do. And what's the best way to get rid of expectations and still be happy, in your opinion?
Well, from my experience, I'd say like I said, I went back through every life experience I've had that I thought was negative. And this took several days, and I checked to see, would I, at this point now, give up that experience if I had to lose all the wisdom I gained from that experience? And I had to say no. I want the wisdom I got from every experience. I wouldn't give up a single one. So, in various ways, something good came of every single one. Every single one. Like, I left no stone unturned. So when that really built this confidence that, wow, maybe every negative thing has more positive than negative. And
Inter
I believe that now. I know it.
Yeah, I mean, even the bad stuff in life always brings you something good out of it. Even if it's not something you see right away, there's always a little chunk of gold in the pile of shit that life gives you sometimes. You just gotta dig through the shit to get to it, and that's the fun part. But when you find it, it kind of does make things all kind of seem at least a little bit worthwhile. A little bit. I'm not gonna say fully, but a little bit worthwhile most of the time.
Yeah, because I've prioritized what matters most to me is that I know my infinite being. And anything that makes me feel like I'm hurting is hurting the limited being. It's never hurting the infinite being. So it's showing me a part that I thought was essential to me that turns out is not essential to me because that's a part that hurts. So it says, "Oh, I'm feeling embarrassed about, so and so yelling at me in front of other people. Oh, but my infinite being's not embarrassed. So that embarrassment, that's just my limited being. Oh, then I don't need to worry about the limited being. So every time I get hurt, I'm in the hospital. It was very, very painful. They didn't think I was going to make it. I was given less than 50% chance of surviving, and there was a lot of pain in that process. And that was all the limited being. Anything that I've experienced, I get to see, okay, let me differentiate more clearly. What's the limited? What's the infinite? And if that's my priority, if I really, really care about that, which in this case I do, then anytime something hurts, it's helping me on my top priority.
Which I mean, I do like the idea of limited versus infinite. I do really like the idea. It's a good way to look at life. I mean, but I gotta ask because this is a paranormal show, and I will say the ability you have is a little bit unique to what I've had before. So on the show, so I gotta ask this question: have you seen anything regarding extraterrestrials in these other dimensions, these other lives?
I have been a being that doesn't live on Earth a couple times. One of them had this thing that shoots out from its abdomen. So, and it's more an amphibian kind of being. So I've been that, and I have interacted with some beings that I couldn't see actually. They came to Earth, brought me into their ship, not on a physical level, on a whatever astral level. I went through some kind of cleaning thing. They brought me over to a big desert. I assume it was our Southwest. And they said, put your energy into the earth. And I just dropped my energy down, down. They said, go further, go further, go further. And then the earth started returning the energy back up and made a cycle. And they were teaching me to do that as a way of evolving with the earth or helping the earth evolve, like something that seemed very helpful at the time. So those were other beings that I interacted with. So yes, there, there are definitely extraterrestrials.
Nice. Okay, that's kind of the answer I was hoping for. So I'm very happy. I'm very satisfied with that one. I really am. And hello, Joanne. Thank you for watching. And I mean, but I mean, because it's well believed that extraterrestrials travel. A lot of people believe that they're actually ultra terrestrials, that they travel through other dimensions rather than through space, because that's very 1950s sci-fi nowadays. But it's it makes more sense that they come through other dimensions. And I mean, if you talk to lucid dreamers or what the other one I can't think of at the moment, um, if you talk to them, like they travel to other dimensions while they're dreaming, and some of the things I've heard, seen are creepy. Some of them are amazing, but there are all these other creatures that just I don't know. It would explain a lot if they can jump through when they want, and that's why we see them when we see them, and we don't see them 90% of the time.
Right, right. And in fact, one of the messages that I got is that um, there's, a soul group of humans that is experiencing what does it feel like to understand the experience of wisdom. Like the infinite being is just flowing perfectly, and wisdom only makes sense if you can think of stupidity or something else. So on earth we get to experience what wisdom feels like, but there's another group here that is experiencing what power feels like, the interplays of power. So whether you're on the total subservient side or the total power trip side, so we get to have this experience of what is greater and greater wisdom and how does that move towards peace. They're having the experience of, well, what does subservience and power, as they ultimately merge, the subservient and the powerful overpowering merge, or whatever that they do. They're like having a totally different trip, and their trip is what they're supposed to be having. So to think that everybody on earth is on this same wisdom journey, it turns out that's not what I was shown. So, we can let them have their journey. We can have our journey. Why did we get into this? Why are we both on the same planet? Well, apparently we were in a position where we were not ready to tune into our inner authority. And that made a kind of vacuum place where our consciousness and their consciousness could coexist for a while, because they're doing power. We were doing, I don't know, I'm being a follower, we were doing, I don't know, being a follower. So as we move out of that stage, there won't be a harmonious ability to be together. So it will change, and they'll fall away to wherever they're going. We'll go to wherever we're going, whatever our separate timelines. It will happen naturally as we actually tune into our inner truths and our inner authority.
Which I can dig that. I really can. It's a lot to wrap your head around, but as I wrap my head around more and more, I'm kind of digging it more and more. It's an interesting theory on how to live life, and makes I mean, well, I guess, I mean, but how do you truly not worry about the state of the world? Because I mean, that's the part that still has me, and I think it's a good topic to kind of end off on in a way. But like, because I mean, the state of the world is kind of, I mean, yeah, there's been bad times in this world before, but I mean, this definitely is top 10. I'd say it's definitely top 10. The world's becoming, I mean, especially in America, the world's becoming unsurvivable. It's becoming unaffordable. It's just becoming desolate. So how do you not worry about that? Like that, I think that's something a lot of people could use that knowledge these days.
Right. Well, I'll give you kind of three levels of answers. Um, the very first level is anytime there's been a catastrophe. I mean, think about 9/11. People bond together. So the worse that things get, the more there will be this caring, okay, we're going to bond together and figure out how to get through it. So that's at, lowest level. Then the next level up is this, that we are is ultimately unharmable. So what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to die. And, if I'm in if it's too bad off, I'll just die. You know, I can just die. So, and it's really great on the other side. It is so great on the other side. At this point, I can't see how things could be too bad because I've gone through pretty much everything. It seems like that, you know, I would have been afraid of, and it turned out good. So, but then the last thing is I know what we are. I feel and I see the strength and the kindness and the desire to create and connect and expand. And I find that, you know, if you look at just your interactions with everyday people, forget about watching the news and watching the media, my interactions with everyday people are that there are so many people I can hold hands with. So that shows me that this thing that we are is blossoming. And yeah, of course, there's a lot of nuts on the surface, you know, a lot of power that just is being so misused, so misused. But even the people who are having to suffer, you know, I've got friends who are vaccine injured really seriously. And those people, I know that their deepest, truest self is discovering itself more fully. They're discovering an inner strength. I trust the process for them. I trust that understanding compassion for each other is right. So I don't want this to sound like I've got the principle, I put it into a box and now I put a stamp on it. It's okay. It's not like that. It's more like there's mystery, but deeper in the mystery is the solid core of love and goodness that I see everywhere.
That's beautiful, actually. That's a beautiful sentiment about how to look at it. And it actually had me thinking a lot, man. I mean, I don't watch the news. I don't like the news at all. I never have. It's always been boring and propagandic to me, so I never wanted to really give it my attention. But I mean, you hear through word of mouth, you hear so much these days about the bad stuff going on, more than you hear about the good, because people only want to complain, people don't want to praise. So it's just the way life goes. But that right there is some good advice for people to take home with them. And before we wrap up, I know you did write two books. Why don't you tell us about them and what they're about?
Sure. The book that I generally think is a good one to start with is actually my second book, which is An Unprincipled Life Living from the Unknown. And it's all about making friends with the mystery, discovering what is the infinite life that we are. And then once we're really recognizing that, you know, my experience was, yeah, I had that moment in 2009 or weeks it was when there was just no individual Lisa. I felt this oneness that is the goodness driving us all. But then there's all our conditioning, you know, all our fears and expectations and attachments and, you know, how we think things should be. How do we deal with all of that? And that's what the second book is. And that book is Living Awake 20 Techniques to End I Got It, I Lost It. And it goes through real good techniques that just help us in those moments when everything looks cloudy. How do we see the light again?
Which they sound like good reads, and if you're stressing people, they sound like they definitely can help. But and of course, those books and well, if people want to book a session with you or contact you in any way, how can people find you? Feel free to
Yes,
promote all your stuff.
my books are on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And my website is experiencingthetrueself.com. You can contact me there for coaching. I also have a YouTube site, Inquiry into Self YouTube channel, which is you can get to that on my website too. So yeah, it's um, you know, everybody already is what we are. It's not about making anybody a better person. It's getting us to enjoy accessing what we already are. And I just happen to have discovered a bunch of tools and I love sharing them for the fun of it.
Well, there you go, folks. Of course, that website will be right in the description of the podcast just to make life easier for everybody. And I want to thank Lisa for coming on because it's been a fun, enlightening hour. It really has, and this conversation was amazing. So thank you for coming on, and having it with me, and letting my listeners and watchers learn a little something. And of course, folks, you all know where you can find me by now. If you don't, shame. Just shame. All shame shouldn't exist. So maybe you're free of shame tonight. I'll let it pass this time. But check the outro. Everything I do is there. Watchers, everything's in the bottom of the screen. Feel free to go to any of those places to find me. And I'll be back tomorrow with another interview. It's going to be interesting, to say the least. We'll get to that tomorrow, though. But thank you, Lisa, for coming on. It's been highly appreciated. And to everybody else, have a good night because I need sleep.